right, everyone. We are recording this episode on September the 23rd, 2025. In this segment of this Mic Drop Mondays, we have with us a special guest. That is Brother Michael Rivera. He is out of Branch 70 in San Diego, California. And I think his claim to fame recently, I don't know what his whole history is, but at least recently, as he submitted charges against President Renfro. Well, I'll let him talk about it, but April the 3rd, he submitted charges, as well as, once he got a response to those charges, submitted other charges on April the 23rd. And so we thought we'd bring him on as we get into this new round of collective bargaining. And we've been putting out a lot of information, we being the union, about the starting of the process and what we're going to be doing this time around versus last time. And, there never really was a clear assessment about how everything went down last time. And I think that there's a general consensus amongst the membership that whatever happened last time, let's just go like 180 degrees away from that thing. It was just a disaster, the amount of time that it took, the broken promises, the expectations that we had versus what we actually got. The fact that when we voted down the tentative agreement, the terms got implemented anyway for the most part, almost identical terms, and just really left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, I think. So I figured it'd be good to talk about it, and no one better than Brother Rivera. I think he really made some really great points, and I think was very valid in a lot of the things that he put forward. So long intro there. I didn't mean to go that long, but thank you, brother, for taking the time. We appreciate you coming on here, the show, and I'll let you start with introduction of yourself and go into kind of what your process was and where we're at right now.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about something that took over a good portion of my year. Well, I'm a city letter carrier, first and foremost. I do not hold any position with my branch. I am not a steward. I am not an officer with the union, so I don't speak for my branch. I don't belong to any affiliation. I'm not affiliated with like the CLC or BFN, despite the misinformation that's been put online. So I do not speak for them. And I only speak as a city letter carrier. And as a city letter carrier, I like to stay connected with other city letter carriers. And with the abundance of social media that's out there, Facebook groups, Discord communities, Reddit, it's not too difficult to stay in tune with the rest of the nation.
Not at all.
So when you go on there and you're hearing, sometimes they're echo chambers, but sometimes they're actual, sharing of real grievances, real issues. And when these grievances become more and more prevalent and more, it seems to be shared amongst the nation, that among the carriers across the country. It compelled me to kind of go dig a little further. You're saying that Renfro this, Renfro that, Renfro didn't do abide to the Constitution. Okay. Show me how. Explain to me why you particularly feel like he didn't fulfill it. So you hear these people go on their conversations and online, they share a little bit there, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is cool. All right, I'll note it, and I'll go and look for myself. So I go and I read the Constitution, and I see that, yeah, we have an issue here. So it's not just myself one day waking up and saying, oh, he did something wrong, I gotta go and hold him accountable. It was a lot of things. The grievances from carriers, And I mean like grievances, I mean low G, like, people just having problems with issues with the way the national's going. Um, I think the call to action by you, Mike, I think was a big catalyst when you did your charges.
Back
And
in October 2024.
that's correct.
Yeah.
You set the foundation for what my charges would become. And when you went through the process, and I thought you got a really bum rap, and they 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 uh, they went ahead and just found them unsubstantial. They found some substantial, but they didn't move forward. They didn't move forward with any of it, and I thought that was that. I mean, that was just BS.
Yeah, let me just jump in there because I can give you the kind of firsthand account. But in October, prior to October 18th, I don't know what the date was, but October 18th was the day we got the tentative agreement. So we had been waiting for something for months and months and months on end, and so we put out a charge letter, and we asked any member of the union if they wanted to sign on to the charge letter, and we had thousands of members come and sign on to the charge letter, and so those were submitted as official charges on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of who knows how many. I mean, I'm assuming you were on the charges, right? Or do you
On
remember?
that one, no.
Oh, okay.
Actually, well, honestly, I didn't sign on to there.
No problem. I know Corey Walton was on there. I know there was a lot of people on there. And the essence of that charge at that time, we didn't have the tentative agreement. And so the charge was basically three things. One was the resolutions number 12 and 22 coming out of the National Convention in Boston. The president wasn't following them. And the resolutions were very specific about certain things he was supposed to be doing to update us, the membership, on what was going on in contract negotiations. And then the third thing was that the president had the opportunity to take us to arbitration in the summer of 2023, and he didn't. And he just kept stringing us along saying, we're close to a deal, we're going to get something, and just like bullshitting us for months on end. And so that was the nature of the charge. The executive vice president, Paul Barner, appointed, because the charge was against the president, Paul Barner appointed Matty Rose out of Region 9, former business agent, branch 1071 in Miami, Florida. And he put together a report which, everyone does things kind of their own way, and he did it his way. The report didn't investigate and gather that much information. I guess Matty didn't feel like that was his role. Because the way the process works with charges under Article 10 of the Constitution is that there's first a written report, and then if those charges based on the written report are found to be substantial, then they'll be in full hearings and that kind of thing, like a full blown up investigation. And so based on Matty's report, which really didn't have much information in it, the members of the executive council finally, when they got to vote on it, and it was sometime this year, 2025, when we finally voted on it, but they were not deemed to be substantial. The majority of the members did not find them substantial. And so from there was a lot of people upset around the country, members that basically the president was just thumbing his nose at us. I mean, by that time we had voted down the tentative agreement, or we were preparing to vote down the tentative agreement. And we were just, still looking for answers about what's going on. And so, and when you brought forth your charges, you kind of took it to the next step, and you can tell everyone about what the charges were in essence. But I know there was one thing in there for sure, which I thought was very significant, which was that what right did the president have to agree to terms, essentially the same terms, that we as the membership had just voted it down? Is he allowed to do that under the terms of the NALC Constitution? I think that was a very legitimate question that you posed in the charge. So I don't know if you want to start with the April 3rd charge.
No, we could start with the April 3rd charges. But yeah, I mean, I will reiterate that you did the call of action. You went on a podcast. You stated, hey, any member can bring up charges. So that was basically saying someone's got to step up and someone's got to file charges, because they weren't going to listen to someone from the executive council going after president. So once the contract was done, once we got through that mediated award, it's like, okay, well, now we need to start, gathering the charges together here. So yeah, that the April 3rd charges basically said there's multiple charges. The first one, which I find personally as the real important one, was Article 9, failure to report official action, which he didn't do, which works in tandem with Resolution 12 and 22 that you introduced. You stated that 12 and 22 weren't followed in the resolutions. I stated that Article 9 wasn't followed, and that was a violation. And then charge 3 was the initiation of failure to initiate arbitration timely. Charge 4 was bypassing the ratification process when he went ahead and just pushed it straight into a mediated award. Didn't go
Yeah,
and
but I thought charge
process.
4. I don't know if you could focus in on charge 4 up on the screen, because I just run into so many members to this day, and we're, like I said, we're getting into a new round of collective bargaining, and everyone really wants to know, does our vote matter? Does our voice matter? Because the Constitution is very clear that the president negotiates on our behalf, forms a team, whatever the president does. We're not necessarily in agreement with his methods, but we do recognize the authority of the president under the Constitution to engage in collective bargaining. And so when the president does that, the one thing that they have to do is they have to, if they come to an agreement, they call it a tentative agreement, it goes out for ratification. It's a referendum that every active letter carrier will get a chance to vote on. And when we vote on that, our vote should matter. And the essence of that charge number 4, the way I understood it, was that our vote didn't matter. That you, as the president of the union, decided that you were going to decide the terms of our contract and not allow the members of the union for us to have our say. Because when we had our say, we voted that thing down overwhelmingly. And then you used your power as the president and you implemented the terms anyway. And the question that was brought forth to me in those charges, in charge number 4 specifically, do you have the authority to do that as the president? I thought that was a great question.
16.3 clearly states that it has to be ratified by regular members, and it was an agreement. It was not something that was decided by arbitration, not at all. There was no arbitration that was held.
Right.
Technically, it was an agreement. They agreed to all the terms that the Postal Service offered there, and it was the same tentative agreement. It needed to go back to the membership, but they pushed it along and violated Article 16.
Well, it wasn't they. It was President Renfro, because, like you said, he's calling it an arbitration award. Obviously, when he was in there with the Postal Service, they agreed that it was going to be deemed an arbitration award by arbitrator Nolan. But in fact, when they met we think, because let's get into the process of what happened with these charges in a second. But the way we understand it, on March 17th and March 18th, the parties met along with Mr. Nolan. And when they met, they were able to talk it out and come to an agreement on the terms, meaning that we had an agreement with the Postal Service and with Mr. Nolan that if we wanted to, we would have the opportunity to take our case to arbitration, meaning that, you call witnesses, meaning that you make presentations, meaning that you make arguments, that everything that we think about when we think about an arbitration hearing. None of that happened, because on March 17th and 18th, they came to an agreement, and then Nolan went back home and he wrote it up, and he said, here's the Nolan Award, as was agreed to by the parties on March 17th and March 18th. And we call that a stipulated award. We don't call, we call that a mediated award or a stipulated award. We don't call that an adversarial arbitration hearing where, for example, we're saying there should be no more CCAs, and the post office is saying, yes, there should, whatever. That's an arbitration hearing. Each side has a position and they fight and defend their position. But what happens with the charges is that And I don't know if we can put the language from Article 10 up on the screen, but it's just not that complicated. In Article 10, it says that when the member puts forth the charges against an officer of the union, that if the charge is a charge of negligence or a charge that the person is violating the terms of the Constitution. And so, for an example, charge number 4 is very clearly an allegation by you, Michael Rivera, a member of the union, that Brian Renfro violated the terms of the Constitution. You quoted the terms that you think he violated, and you said how you thought he violated them. And so in Article 10 of the Constitution, it's clear that when that type of allegation is brought forth, that the first step that's supposed to take place is that there's an investigator named to find out more information. And so what should have happened was there should have been an investigator, and the investigator should have came forth and said, Brother Renfro, what happened on March 17th and March 18th? What agreement did you enter into with the Postal Service? What happened there? So I know that that's not what happened because I'm on the executive council of the union. And so I know what happened, but why don't you tell everyone what happened after you submitted your charges, your April the 3rd charges?
Well, I believe it was April 16th that the emergency meeting was held with the executive council. And in that executive council meeting, it was which was called by Renfro, the accused, and he moved that the charges would be tabled, I would say, not necessarily dismissed. More like this has been pushed back down, saying we're not going to address this for a myriad of reasons. And now going back to what I said when I said they, and not you mentioned Renfro, I say they because it's embedded in my brain what his reasoning for the fourth charge was, and I have the letter here. If you want me to go ahead straight to the 4th charge and what he said on the letter, what was written by Mac Julian, which I'm guessing was notated from what Renfro wanted.
Well, just for clarification, Mac's role on the executive council is he's the secretary of the executive council. So when you get a letter from Mac Julian in that role, you're not really getting a letter from Mac himself. Like, here's my opinion. He's going to tell you that this is what happened at the executive council meeting, and I'm recording that meeting and giving you the response on behalf of the executive council.
Okay, so based on the letter, what's written on the letter, quote, the 4th charge alleges that President Renfro failed to conduct a ratification vote with respect to the Nolan Award. The council determined that the Nolan Award was legally final and binding on the parties and was not subject to a ratification vote. That's what he wrote down as the reason behind the 4th charge being genuinely, basically the rest of my charges being ignored. So he put the onus on the council there, which probably.
Well, there was a vote. I mean, I was there, and there was a vote, and a lot of people are aware of the vote. The vote was 14-11. 3 people were absent.
Right.
And the vote was basically to not do what the Constitution required, which was to appoint an investigator. And what you read is a finding of fact. And in the process, the constitutional process, there's not a finding of fact until you do the investigation, the initial investigation, and then you make a determination on it. But to say there's an allegation that the president violated the Constitution, but we don't think he violated the Constitution because, and then kind of give your justification is out of line. It's not what,
Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that you guys are the appointed investigators, but you guys made yourselves investigators with the instruction of Renfro, the behest of Barner, and the capitulation of more than half of, I would say half of the executive council.
14 out of 28, right?
Yeah, 14. Like, if you took off the Barner and Renfro, it would have been 12-12. Or no, it would have been more like 12-11.
Still 12-11.
It's not 12-11 because of the one abstaining. That's right.
No, 3 people weren't there.
Oh, okay.
It was like a WebEx. It was not in person, and one person lost connection, and 2 people were never on. I think it was, but anyway, 3 people didn't vote.
Darn. No, but
Well, you don't know how they would have voted anyway, but
yeah, we don't know. We don't know. It's going to be a big what if,
Right.
But at the end of the day, the Article 10, the procedure behind Article 10 was violated. And what happens in my second set of charges, I say that they violate Article 9. Was it 19? It was they violate the
We
Constitution.
violated Article 10. We violated Article 10 of the Constitution. I think that was
There's a
clear.
whole lot of articles that were violated. Article 10, Article 9 was violated again, and then if and then also just by rewrite, almost trying impromptu, like de facto rewriting the Constitution in real time, basically saying, "Oh no, this isn't the procedure we're going to do. We're not going to give him the investigation like everybody needs to get. We're going to decide it here." And that you're literally rewriting the Constitution, the rules.
And I don't think, and I don't, you probably don't think either. I doubt the outcome would have been different had they followed the Constitution, just because we've seen how the Executive Council has voted on charges that I think are obviously substantial. And we've had members of our council that have kind of went like this and be like, I don't see substantial. It's like, really? You don't think that's substantial? So we probably know what the outcome would have been. But what would have happened, what should have happened, is that there's an investigator appointed. The investigator writes a written report. The report goes back to you, the member of the union, as a person who brought forth the charge. You received the report, and then the Executive Council is supposed to vote based on the report whether or not the charge is substantial, yes or no. And like I say, it probably would have been the same outcome, but you would have had a finding of fact. You would have had a report from somebody that, in this case, would have been appointed by Vice President James Henry, because the charge was against the president as well as the executive vice president.
Correct. Information. At the very least, we would have obtained information. We would have gotten some idea about the way negotiations happened. We could find out more about this Rondo Barner proposal that existed. Based on what the Weir report said, it does exist. We would have found we would have had a lot more accountability with the information that we would have received. We would have been able, as a body of people, we would have all this information to determine. Maybe the Executive Council will go ahead and find it substantial. Politics will live. Will save them, protect them, but at least the membership will have that information, and they will be able to determine whether this guy is. I think we all know that he's not fit for the job, but with more information, with facts, not just opinions, it would have been a greater help.
Look, this is where I want to say a couple of things. One is, and this is just probably my opinion. I know it's just my opinion because I know people have an opposite opinion or different opinions. But my opinion is a charge is similar to like a grievance. It doesn't mean that there's a violation. It doesn't mean anything on the surface. But where a member of our union has an allegation against an officer of the union will appoint an investigator. And it doesn't mean that the union will appoint an investigator and assign them to work for 30 days on end, sun up to sundown. It could be the most simple investigation, like making a phone call. Who knows, right? But the Constitution says a member has a right to bring forth a charge. It's kind of like the check and balance that exists within the Constitution. And a member can bring forth the charge, and then an investigator is appointed, and you get a written report, and then you go from there. And so, to me, that's a right of every member of this union to have, and we shouldn't take that right away from anybody, just on principle, whether we agree with the charge or not, whether we think the charge is substantial or not. I mean, ironically enough, we've appointed investigators for charges that were clearly not substantial, right? But yet, you have your charge, which was very legitimate and was something that did require further investigation. And we do these kind of gymnastics, these constitutional gymnastics and these word twists to not do what the Constitution clearly says is supposed to happen, which is, supposed to appoint an investigator. I was going to ask you before I want to get to the response that you received from your April 23rd charges, the second charge you submitted. I want to get to that, but I had a question. Were you aware because I just recently became aware of this myself, but were you aware of resolution number 11 that came from the 2024 convention in Boston? I know you and I were talking about it earlier on the phone, but had you been aware of that? I had not been until recently.
I was made aware of that after I had submitted the second set of charges,
Got you.
and I had already produced the podcast, which is a Code Lite Blue. If anybody's willing to wants to listen to the charges, be read to them. I read the entire charges, both the first set and the second set. After I went on Classes of Mail with Alan Giax, we had a talk, and he mentioned it to me.
Yeah, he's the one that mentioned it to me as well.
Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, wish I would have known that. Which is not too late. And then
Sarah, can you read what the resolve was on that? Yeah, that resolution 11. Can you read the resolved?
Our union representatives will function in complete transparency for the benefit of this membership by sharing comprehensive, detailed information after negotiations are settled between the National Association of Letter Carriers and the United States Postal Service.
And so that was passed at the 2024 convention. And so as of March 21st, 2025, the negotiations had been settled between the NALC and the Postal Service. And the question that I have is, do we believe that the union shared comprehensively all the information and gave us detailed information after the negotiations were settled? What do you think about that?
I don't think we. I mean, you want to just say that the photo was comprehensive? I mean, that's all that we got, right? The picture.
What was comprehensive? Oh, the picture. The photo was comprehensive.
That's all we got. I mean, that's all I remember.
I mean, we got the arbitration award, but to me, this, or what they call an arbitration award, to me, this is the questions that the members had during that whole time. You know, starting in February 22nd of 2023, all the way up to March 21st. Of 2025, give us a timeline, give us a blow by blow, give us a, here's what happened here, here's what was proposed here, here's what we were waiting on here. I mean, how often were you meeting, right? That's one question I have. At what point, like you were mentioning, the Weir report indicated that when President Renfro was off on his leave of absence, we had Paul Barner in there acting as the president, negotiating with the Postal Service. He brought in our former president, Fred Rolando, to participate in the negotiations. And, you know, how far had they gotten? What was the status of any of their discussions at that time and then President Renfro came back maybe about 2-3 months later, and, you know, the whole time frame, during the time frame when President Renfro was going around the country saying we should have something in 2 weeks and soon, and all of those things that we kind of started making fun of him about. But legitimately, what was he referring to? You know, during the time, he kept telling us, I can't tell you the details because it would undermine our bargaining position, which I always thought was some bullshit. But still.
But at this point now, the contract's done and
yes,
and it's set. So when I asked to see the Rolando Barner report, I mean the proposal, why was Renfro squeamish and just wanted to just table my charges? I mean, because really the information I was requesting was the Rolando Barner proposal and the information and whatever information that came from it. What was negotiated. But he didn't want to share that. He wasn't going to share that because it would put egg on his face.
And still hasn't shared it. And so my concern, and I think a lot of members of the union have the concern that now we're going into contract negotiations next year, beginning next February. We're obviously in a, you know, I think a somewhat weaker position. We're not in the same, we don't have the same leverage we had in 2023 coming out of the pandemic. And, you know, the White House was, quote, labor friendly. And, you know, we had all of these big wins by other unions at that time. You know, obviously the environment is different and is going to be different in 2026. And the question we all have is, okay, so what are we going to do different this time? What did we do last time? Because we really haven't had an accounting of what happened last time. And how is this time going to be different where we're actually going to make advances in the contract and not be stalled again? So what response did you get from that April 23rd? Is it a long letter? Is it something you could just read real quick?
You know what? It's no, it's pretty short. Let me go ahead and bring it up here. Let's see where it's at. And yeah, it's just a one pager despite the other one.
Okay. Yeah, what does it say?
Hold on, I'm looking for it here. Give me just a minute. Where's it?
I assume it was from Mac Julian as well, Secretary of the Executive Council.
Go ahead and yes, it was. And here we go. Okay, dear Brother Rivera, I write you in reference to the formal filing of Article 10 charges against the full Executive Council, President Brian Renfro, and Executive Vice President Paul Barner. We received your correspondence on April 28, 2025 at NALC headquarters. Please be advised that your charges were reviewed by the NALC Executive Council on May 28th. The council voted to take no action on your allegations and advised that you have the right to appeal your disagreement of the council's actions on April 16th, 2025 to the National Convention, consistent with your rights to appeal. As stated, no further action will be taken with respect to the charges. In solidarity, Mac Julian.
What's your thoughts on that constitutionally?
They sidestep, and they once again.
What justification is there for no action if you have charges? You know, the only threshold for charges is simple. It has to be either an allegation of derelict of duty or negligence, whatever, I forget the exact term, or an allegation that the officer violated the Constitution when they did whatever.
Article 9.
If that allegation is in there, what justification do we have to say no action was taken when action is specifically required in Article 10?
Not only two constitutional articles were violated, but three: Article 9, Article 10, Article 19. And there were three that were cited, and there were three that I gave presented evidence and exhibits. I gave exhibits on this one. We had multiple exhibits attached to these charges.
What's Article 9, the duties of the president?
Article 9 is the duties of the officers, including the president.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And what was the other one?
Article 10, of course, is the process.
So basically,
Article 19
in the response to the April 3rd charges, the Executive Council didn't follow the Article 10 process when they responded. Right. Okay.
That's
yes, 1 and 2. What was the third one?
Article 19. Article 19, by doing it by these rules, by their own new rules, they were revising the Constitution in real time without the consent of the membership.
Right. Without a real amendment. And that's the thing that's been kind of just gotten, and you get lawyers involved and it gets kind of crazy, but we have a Constitution, and the Constitution, as you just stated, can only be amended by the delegates to the National Convention. There's a couple of exceptions in there. But anyway, basically the membership has to amend the Constitution. However, who interprets the Constitution? I mean, we all know how to read. And so you read Article 10, you're like, okay, here's what it says, right? And someone else says, no, that's not what it says at all. You're like, huh? It doesn't? Like, it seems to be pretty clear what it says. But then they say, well, that's my interpretation. So I'm the president of the union, or I'm the executive council of the union. And so I'm interpreting this Constitution in a way that really doesn't make any sense to you, the person who's bringing forth the charge. But hey, they say that's what I think the Constitution says. And if you don't like what I say, what the Constitution says, then you can take your issue to the supreme body of the union, which is the delegates to the convention. But I think by that time, we're talking about August of 2026. All the time has passed. And really, what could the delegates to the convention in August of 2026, what could they do? Because what should have happened was there should have been an investigation. And so if you get an investigation in August of 2026, there's almost no value in that.
It doesn't help the membership. It doesn't help the membership at all for the goal that was intended.
And it doesn't rectify the constitutional problem. So that to me was just just strange. Some of the decisions that were made by President Renfro, by Executive Vice President Paul Barner, and some decisions made by the Executive Council as a whole, to me, are not justified by the NALC Constitution. But, I guess there can be different interpretations of anything, right?
Well, the thing is, though, we made it very clear in the body of the charges that this was not an appeal to the decision of the first charge. But if you read the letter there, they frame it as if it was an appeal,
Right.
as if I was attempting to appeal it, and that's why they defer me to.
No, you're saying the Constitution was violated when you decided not to appoint an investigator after the April 3rd charges.
It's not an appeal towards the first charges. It's I'm getting them on procedure. I'm getting them on the procedure that took place on April 16th. And
Yeah,
so,
I'm with you.
but they wanted to frame it this different way. And look,
the only thing and this was not in the response to you, but can you have a charge against the Executive Council, right? I mean, it's not clear in Article 10 because Article 10 is a charge really that's supposed to be against a particular officer. But all of the 28 officers of the union acting in conjunction with each other or whatever, we erred. We violated the Constitution clearly, in my opinion, when we responded the way we did to the April the 3rd charges. But can a member bring forth charges against the entire Executive Council in the manner that you did? Like I said, it wasn't even in the response that they gave to you, so I don't think that the response was appropriate. But that question still is kind of unanswered out there.
Any number of officers that are bringing up the charges, and then they feel like they cannot adjudicate properly, that have to go to past president. And what we had was Zambrano back in 93. They went to a special convention. They called a special convention.
Right. That's a good point. In that instance, the charges were brought against the entire Executive Council, and the ruling by President Zambrano at the time was that there's no way that because the first step after you appoint an investigator, they have a report. The first step is the Executive Council has to determine whether or not the charges are substantial or not. And how could the Executive Council determine whether or not charges are substantial against themselves? But in this case, instead of them saying, okay, we're going to bring in some outside people, we're going to have a special convention or anything like that, they said, well, we're just going to pretend like this charge doesn't exist. And if you don't like the outcome, you can appeal what happened from the first charge to the convention in Los Angeles. And that's really not the right approach to take there.
They were smart enough to recuse themselves and allow it to go to Vegas. But the thing is here in this case,
well, they didn't recuse themselves. That was a decision by President Zambrano, right? It wasn't like I don't recall. I wasn't around back then, but I never saw anything that said they took a vote on it or whatever. It was just President Zambrano made a ruling that said the only fair way to do this is to have a special convention. And he said anyone who was a delegate to the previous convention is a possible delegate to this convention. Come if you want to. Don't come if you want to. We're gonna form a committee. We're gonna investigate what happened, and then we're gonna vote as a union. And that's a fair way of handling it,
yeah, and we're a far cry from Zambrano because when the charges were brought up against Renfro and Barner could have just recused themselves from the first meeting, from the first go, and let the Executive Council decide to go and appoint the investigator. But in both cases, they interfered. They interfered in both charges, both set of charges.
Yeah, I saw that was part of your charges as well. That like you were saying, the meeting that was called on April the 16th, the Executive Council meeting, it's called by the very person who the charges are against, President Renfro, as well as Paul Barner was kind of working
up votes.
Yeah, exactly. Whipping votes. That's exactly what happened. You're whipping votes prior to the votes, and none of that is supposed to take place. Look, I got nothing against whipping votes. I do the same thing. But the Constitution, that's not the first step. The first step is appoint an investigator. Yep. Then you go ahead and whip your votes. Have at it. That's all fair. But it was not fair. Well, it's logical that you felt that it wasn't fair in the manner that was done because the people with whom you were bringing charges against, had an unfair advantage, and they were the ones, controlling the outcome of what happened as a result of the charges.
And don't get me wrong, like prior to the second set of charges coming up to that May 28th meeting, I was on the phone. I was on the phone with people. Like I was on the phone talking and saying, "Hey, look, do what's right. Bring this up. Of course, I'm talking to my region, and I had a conversation with James Henry too on the phone. He was over in Hawaii, and and multiple people. I send letters. I send letters to different regions, and trying to just appeal to their better angels and see if they can go ahead and just consider this, bring this up. And when they have their opportunity to be interviewed, they can tell the truth. And I know that truth is that Renfro and Barner had a big hand in why they did what they did on April 16th. But that's, they had an opportunity. I had to, sometimes you can lead the horse to water they won't drink. And a lot of these folks up there, they won't drink because, of course, who's leading? No one's going to listen to those folks. Don't want to listen to a carrier. They don't want to listen to a little carrier. And the most important, I think, when I talk to
union of letter carriers, so I hope that's not the case.
Well, the only one who still carries mail is you.
Once in a while.
So
I remember that. I remember that May 28th meeting, and there was a lot of discussion back and forth, and I was probably in the middle of all of that. And what I was trying to convince my colleagues on the council is that while we may have made a mistake when we responded to the April 3rd charges in the way we did, and it was a close vote, 14-11, and but now that we've had a chance to think about it, now that we've had a chance to kind of study that constitutional language a little bit more, let's not compound it by dismissing these new charges. These charges are saying that we, the members of the Executive Council, the supreme body of the union in between conventions, that we violated the Constitution in the way that we responded to, the original charges. And that's legitimate. You got to look within. And this gives us an opportunity to rectify that and to go back to the members and say, you know what, we're officers of the union. We're going to follow the constitutional processes that have been in place. They've been approved by the members of the union. We work for you, the members of the union. And I was pretty passionate about it. You can ask anyone that was there at that Executive Council meeting on May 28th. And it was, like I said, a lot of back and forth. I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of people that were engaged in that. And we tried to get there, and we just couldn't get there. We didn't have enough support on the council. And that's why you got the letter that you got, after the May 28th meeting. So,
yeah.
So where are we at now?
Well, I mean, prior to the May 28th meeting, I had produced my podcast, Code Lite Blue, to just find another avenue to share the charges with a broader audience. And after that was done, I went ahead and after May 28th, I went ahead and filed with the NLRB. So
the National Labor Relations Board?
I did. I went ahead and did that.
What was the charge and what was their response?
Still waiting on the response. They've already accepted it, but just focus more on that charge 4, on it being a mediated award and not arbitration. So I made make sure that that's there, among I think a few other things. I won't disclose right now, but I sent that over, and the process is going to drag. Unfortunately, right now our labor has been taking a hit, and so NLRB is no exception.
There's nobody home over there.
Yeah, so it seems. But I've been told, like, hey, show up to the state convention, go, appeal.
Well, you missed that one, man. I was there. I didn't see you.
No, I didn't. I was burnt out. I honestly was burnt out. You see, the thing is that
you put a lot in, man. You put a lot in.
And you're driven, if your performance is driven by momentum, and when you don't feel like the momentum is there, I saw a lot of division on Facebook, and Facebook is always divisive. But online, I saw a lot of folks, for pro and con, and I I really expressed the need to bring it up to your branches. I would get a lot of pushback saying, "Hey, I can't bring this up to my branch. They'll blackball me. They'll blackball me." And I'm like, then how are we going to move this along?
Right.
How are people going to be aware that these charges exist? How are they going to be aware that that there could be a movement if we just move? There's no solidarity.
Don't sell ourselves short.
Yeah,
Don't sell ourselves short. And I think that it's a point well taken that you shouldn't predetermine what you think the outcome is going to be. If you're advocating for something that's right, that's in the interest of the members of the union, then you should do it. And you may not win the day on day one, but you will move the needle a little bit, and it starts moving. I don't. I was going to try to do the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. about the arc of justice or whatever, but it goes in the right direction. It doesn't always happen, the day of or right then and there, but it goes in the right direction. And I guess I just wanted to, and I appreciate you coming on the show. I thought that, like I said in the beginning, you really put forth a good effort, and you were trying to move the union in the right direction. And I appreciate that from any member of the union, whoever they are. If you're trying to push us in the right direction and get us to a place that's a better place that, makes us a stronger union. And I think us having a constitution is a good thing. Us following the Constitution is a good thing. Our president following the Constitution and the will of the members is a good thing. And so you pushing us in that direction or helping to push in that direction, to me, is something very positive. And you could just do nothing, right? You could just go deliver your mail and go home and pay your dues, but you decided to do something else, something extra. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I appreciate what you did.
I'll forward that.
Even though I know the results weren't what you wanted.
I'll forward that thank you, because although I compiled it, this was a lot of feedback from a lot of people, on the Discord, a lot of people on forums that took the time to actually read what I put out there and actually give me their feedback and say, look, what if you do this? What if you do that? There we had advocates who come and I won't name names because I don't want to put them on the spot. And if they don't want to, they'll point themselves out if they on episodes or something. But there were folks out there who helped me with a lot of these charges, and charge 4 was important one that was helped. It was a collaborative, and so that so that was a big help. And I want to thank those who did take the time to actually read it, actually humor me a little, and incorporate a little bit there. And I just took the ball and I ran with it. I made it into a set of charges. And
very well written, man. And I know that we always get a lot of our people, like you mentioned the term advocates. A lot of our people are advocates, Step B reps, grievance handlers, and you kind of learn to talk a little bit in that lawyer language, and you learn to write well and express yourself well. And I thought both of the set of charges were very well written, very well explained, and it makes sense that you got help from some of our people around the union that have those experiences and are able to help out with that. That's awesome.
You use what you can. You use whatever tools that you have in your disposal to make this professional, make it coherent, and factual as much as you can present, and just it's like the tools are out there. There are people that are interested out there. You just have to go out there and look for them. I would not discourage anybody to file charges if these, like that says on the second letter there, they decide to take no action on my charges. It doesn't mean that my charges are dismissed. It does not mean they're invalid. It doesn't mean that they cannot be reintroduced again. So it's up if you have read the charges, which I highly recommend that you do, or listen to my podcast, Code Lite Blue. If you agree with this, if you believe that there was a real violation of our Constitution, then I would go ahead and consider resubmitting it, but also include your touch, include violations that you may see that maybe I didn't see. I mean, look, the resolution 11. Mike just talked about it. We just talked about it in the podcast. It hasn't been touched.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a clear violation.
And it's been since March 21st. What is that? 6 months ago. It's been 6 months, and nobody has brought that forward. Somebody should, but let's see where that goes.
Members of the NALC, 11, 12, 22, bring them back up. Bring back Article 9 violation. Bring back Article 10 procedure violation. We did it again. In fact, add in preferential treatment, because the other day, I think what I want to mention, on May 28th, my charges got shut down, but you were able to get the NALC charges through. And that was a stroke of hey, you deserve the credit because you put them in a spot. If you want to go ahead and detail that a little bit more for the people.
Well, I probably don't, because they don't keep they don't keep the record of the executive council meeting. It's not like C-SPAN where like everyone knows, and so it's hard to do a recounting. Like, I don't mind at all giving everyone a recounting of something and say, here was the vote, or here's what was decided. But when you get into like the blow by blow, there's people on the executive council, and maybe even myself included, like, you should be free within the executive council to speak your mind and have that, back and forth. And you don't always want those words to be thrown back in your face. Like, you said this, and then I said that, and that kind of thing. But,
get the edit button ready. Get the edit button ready. Okay. All right. No, in the first two podcasts you came out with, you already talked about it. Let's just be clear.
Okay.
You did give a little bit of blow by blow. I'm just going to give you your flowers because you did catch him colluding. You did catch him colluding on the spot, because when the NALC charges got voted through, they wanted to decide their investigators. Both Barner wanted to decide the investigator for Renfro. Renfro wanted to decide the investigator for Barner.
Right.
I mean, it was real time. They were colluding.
All of a sudden, like, I do remember that it was a so with your charges, and I don't remember every detail of everyone's charges. There's been multiple charges, but specifically with your charges, we don't want to appoint an investigator, which to me was totally improper. But like you said, there were other charges brought forth by Brother Darren Knowles, and those charges, they came up with this kind of collusion where President Renfro said, okay, there's charges against the EVP, so I'll appoint an investigator there, and the EVP will appoint an investigator to look into the charges against me, and, we'll just kind of wash this thing up real easy. And I was able to convince everyone on the council that, hey, one, that looks really bad. Two, that's not really the intent of that language in appointing an investigator. It should fall to someone who's not involved in the charges, which in this case was Vice President James Henry. And we were able to pass that by a vote in the executive council that James Henry would get a chance to appoint the investigator. He did. He ended up appointing 2 investigators. One was Craig Bishop out of Branch 133, Sacramento, California. And the other one was Lenny something out of Branch 9 in Minneapolis. And they did submit their reports to the executive council. Unfortunately, Brother Knowles' charges were not deemed to be, they were not substantial. By unanimous consent, they were not substantial. And what we really needed was an investigation into your charges, Brother Rivera. That's what we really needed. So
I tried to get through the NALC charges. It's really hard to find. Luckily, I did find something, but with me, it was all transparency, being as transparent as possible, putting it up, posting it up, and sharing it. Not everyone's like that. Not everyone's that's not everyone's modality, and so it's hard really to give a real good opinion on the NALC charges. All I know is that it was some call it a derivative of mine, but it was an attempt, and I mean you gotta give the brother credit. He gave it a good shot, and he got it into the investigation process. And unfortunately, they didn't rule to his favor. I don't know what's in the investigative reports. I'm very curious to see that, because if there's any details at all I know is from what Corey Walton had shared on his podcast, and it seemed very thin.
I'm not sure if I heard it. Did Corey just read the report? So there's a report. So Craig Bishop obviously has a copy of his own report, and Darren Knowles has a copy of the report because, he receives it. All of us on the executive council, we read the report and then we turn it back in. So I don't actually have a copy of it. But those two people have it, and maybe one of them shared it with Corey. And if Corey read it, I would assume he also would have posted a copy of it. So it shouldn't be hard to get a copy of that report, just so you can see what's in there. But like I said, those charges were not substantial. And I looked at them a lot of different ways, and we all kind of looked at them, and maybe I think Corey talks about how there may have been other ways to do the investigation that may have shown things to be more substantial. And I thought the most important part of Nall's charges was the accusation that President Renfro lied to us during that process, during that time frame, which was summer of 2023 all the way up until October of 2025. For example, in July and August of 2024, up to October 2024, I'm sorry. Summer of 2025 to October of 2024, was he lying to us when he was giving us these reports, reports regarding the status of collective bargaining? And one example was, we were at the convention and he's indicating that, any second now we could have a deal. So you're in front of thousands of members, delegates, and you're obviously, fighting for your own livelihood, because at that time there were charges against him and they were being heard at the convention. And he's presenting this narrative that that we in the Postal Service are very close to coming to a tentative agreement, and it didn't happen. And then it was 2.5 months later that we got the tentative agreement, which was very underwhelming. And you're wondering, was he or was he not just bullshitting us, at the convention in August in Boston? But we never got an answer to that. So within Nall's charges, there was an allegation of lying, but it really wasn't, spelled out, and it really wasn't explored. Right. And the investigation that came as a result of that really didn't uncover any substantial instances where the president had lied to us. And that could be because he wasn't lying to us during that time, or it could be because the investigator just wasn't able to ascertain that information. So I don't know what the answer was, but when you read the report, there's no way you can call it substantial, because there was nothing substantial in there, in my opinion, and the opinion of everyone else on the executive council.
What was unfortunate too is that I think he had a little bit of access with Orlando and never really pushed them further. I know my charges, my first set of charges were cited as an exhibit.
Craig Bishop did interview President Orlando, former President Orlando. He did.
Did he ask him point blank about the proposal?
That I think he did, actually, but you don't know Craig Bishop. You should be able to call Craig and get a copy of it, or call Corey and get a copy of the report. But I'm pretty sure, there was a question, and some questions for President Orlando that were answered.
No, I was after May 28th. After May 28th, I've been left out of the loop there. Or it wasn't much in the loop, anyways. And that comes to another important thing. These charges were a lot of for me as a city letter carrier, knowing that elections coming 2026, this was a litmus test. Honest to God, it was a litmus test to see who's going to help me along this way. And it was kind of a test to you, Mike, because when you're being made that call to action, say, hey, anybody can file charges and stuff. I went ahead and I did it, so when I went out and I needed guidance, or I needed to talk to see if I can communicate with people within the executive council, you know, you have been the most transparent. You've been the most transparent and but the most and the honest, brutally honest. With folks like my own region, no, it's very scripted. It's like, you know, hey, you're preaching to the choir, you know, we agree with you, but I can only do so much, and that's it. But it's the same script. You know, you can hear this from you know, I heard from Mac. I heard the same thing. It's like you're preaching to the choir. Same link, same exact thing. You're preaching to the choir. I heard from James Henry. You're preaching to the choir, buddy. I'm working hard. I'm advocating. But as my role, I will do what is required of me, and that's it. Do what is required of me, and that's the extent of my obligation, which is fair, right? It's fair. You know, you don't have to, you know, you just do what you need to do. You do everything right by the book. But what rubbed me a little bit the wrong way is that, you know, you folks in that position can't just rest on their laurels. Folks in that position have to do a little. They do a little extra. They go out there and they do have to go and hang with the well, I wouldn't say the low tier, but the base, and the base
Members
is
of the union, you know,
members of the union.
Yeah.
And every time, you know, stories been brought up about Mike Cariff, hey, you're just hanging with the base. You've always been hanging with the base. You've always been shooting straight with us. And that was, and you know, my conversation with you was no exception. That's exactly what happened. When I'm on the phone with James Henry, and he's taking my phone call. No, he calls me back, and he's in Hawaii, and he's counting me down. He says, "Hey, brother, I got a place to be. You got 30 minutes." So I'm starting to talk. I'm telling him, I'm giving him
30 minutes ain't bad.
No, it ain't bad. Well, actually, I think it was maybe 20. But,
Okay.
but anyways, it goes down to 15. So reminds me, you got 10. At the end of the conversations, he's kind of like, you know, you should be, you know, you're preaching to the choir. You need to be talking to Renfro about this. And I hear that. And I'm like, brother, I'm not the one with the ticket to DC.
Yeah.
You guys have
look, man. I appreciate the love, the accolades, or whatever. My principles are the same as the principles right at the beginning of the Constitution, which is that we're a fraternal organization of letter carriers, and I'm here to help any letter carrier in the way that I can, and I'm here to help our union become stronger. And I've never believed that keeping information from people helps the union be stronger, because what it does is that isolates people and it pushes people away when you do that. And so I've always been a big proponent of sharing information. It allows people to participate. It brings people under the big tent. I've always been a proponent of being honest. I don't believe in bullshitting the members. I don't believe in playing politics. I don't believe in none of that. I think at the end of the day, we as a union, we have democratic, you know, we take votes, and, you know, however those votes come out or how they come out. But I don't try to replace my opinion with the opinion of everyone else. I am passionate about how I feel about probably everything. But at the end of the day, the direction that the members of the union want to go in is the direction we're going to go in. And I'm just one person part of the process, just like you're one person part of the process, but we're trying to play our role. And so we got to help each other out a little bit, you know? And so I, you know, try to walk in those type of ways, within the union, and hopefully that will help us, you know, we'll be successful. One thing I was going to say, I didn't get a chance to jump in, is that there is a part of those resolutions that come from the convention in Boston in 2024 about collective bargaining and about involving the public and about having rallies and, you know, getting out there and getting the public support. To the extent that we're going to have to do that, I firmly believe we need to be doing that ourselves and not rely on President Renfro, because President Renfro has shown two things. One, he doesn't believe philosophically in getting the public involved in our cause for a better contract. And two, he doesn't believe in following the damn resolutions that are passed at the convention. And so I'm not going to wait for him to come up with some great plan of how to mobilize the members and get the public on our side. That's something we're gonna be doing ourselves, you know. So I invite you to be a part of that, and any member of the union and every branch of the union, you know, to be a part of that type of atmosphere. And we're gonna try to do something different next time in the next round of collective bargaining. And we're gonna start by saying, hey, we're going to be out there, we're going to be advocating, we're going to be public, and we're going to try to get the public to be on our side. And that in and of itself, you know, changes the dynamic and gives us some leverage that we really didn't have last time.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think about the current situation right now with the committees?
So I think that it is a positive development because it involves more people of the union. And like, for instance, I'm on one of the committees, which I've been telling everyone is, I mean, it's no secret. I'm on the Article 7, Article 12, and Article 26 committee. And there's various people on different committees. And so I've been getting feedback from people and saying, you know, hey, here's what I think about this, or here's what would be a good way of doing this. And so to the extent that we're involving members of the union in the process, the more the merrier. I think that's great. You get different ideas, you get different perspectives. Bringing that forward to the center is great. The question is, what is going to happen with those ideas going forward? Because we know for a fact that President Renfro led the collective bargaining process last time. He's leading it again this time. And we know for a fact that we had over 200 proposals that were submitted to him and whoever was part of his team that he formed in March of 2023 last time. We had those proposals in there, and maybe we'll have more this time, but we had a substantial number. I mean, 200 is a high number of proposals. There was, you know, we were having rallies out there about ending mandatory overtime, obviously about the CCA classification. I mean, you know, this was all on the table. This was known. If you go back and look at the opening statement that President Renfro put forth to the Postal Service, February 22nd of 2023, he laid it all out, man. We got to get rid of the non-career classification. It doesn't work. You know, we can't have it anymore. We just worked through the pandemic. The job is more dangerous. So all of that information is there. All of these ideas and proposals are there, and I think we're going to do a better job this time. And I do appreciate the effort that President Renfro is trying to bring more people into the fold. But the question still remains that he needs to answer is, how are we going to accomplish our bargaining goals? Because we haven't had much success at all convincing the Postal Service that they should work with us in collective bargaining. And last time we didn't even take our case to an interest arbitration panel. And traditionally we haven't had very much, we haven't attempted to take issues that are not directly related to pay and benefits in front of an arbitration panel. And so some of the issues that are just so glaring, the uniform problem, the grievance procedure, you know, the start times, the safety issues, you know, you can go up and down the contract. You know, how are we going to get these things? How are we going to get maternity leave? You know, how are we going to get there? Or are we just going to say, oh, well, we tried, we put it on the table, you know, they told us no, you know, that kind of thing. I don't think that's good enough. And so you know, long story short, I'm happy to see more members involved, but I want to see a clear strategy for success this time that we didn't have last time.
Yeah, I really hope there are more folks who share the optimism. I know right now in the state of the NALC, there's a lot more apathy, but I think if folks actually see positive momentum or progress and not just look at the photos and videos as just being performative, then, you know, actual substance being sent down to the base, right, then yeah, maybe we might see a little bit more of an optimistic approach or feeling within the union. But as of right now, I can't share that sentiment. Right now, I think a lot of folks just have kind of lost their faith with the union, with whatever measure they take at this point, whether it be a committee, whether it's the president. He's got an election to win, so he's going to do whatever it takes, I think, to try to win that, to why to try to, and he's going to have to perform a little better by allowing the base to have some input. That's why we got the surveys this week. Some folks got it, some folks didn't.
Did we though?
Did you?
I did not get it. Did any of you guys get that survey?
I got it.
Sarah, no. Renee?
Nobody.
No, I didn't get it. I'm not special. I didn't get it.
So did you take it? Did you take the survey or did you ignore it?
I did. I actually did. It was like a lot like the last survey, but this time they asked us who we voted for. I was like, why do you need to know that?
What do you mean? You mean how you voted on the tentative agreement?
Nope. How I voted in the general election.
Like if you voted for like Trump or
Trump
Kamala
or Harris. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they asked how we feel about Trump. And so about how he's handling certain things. I don't know.
Depending if you voted for him or not, okay.
So
That's
I don't
a
know
good
how
question.
that's going to help us with the tentative agreement upcoming, but they
Well,
want.
I'm not sure, and this is just one of these things, and it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I'm on the executive council of the union. You'd think I would know that there's a survey, so I can tell the people in my region that there's a survey coming out, and you would think I would know the purpose of the survey. How much does the survey cost? Are we going to get the results of the survey? When are the results going to come out? Just basic questions about this. You think I would know the answers, and I don't. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It just means that I don't know.
It just means that some things haven't changed with Mr.
Right.
Brian Renfro.
Yeah,
So
that's
unfortunately,
for sure.
it's going to be. We're gonna have to wait and see whether we have a different Brian Renfro show up for the collective bargaining process.
That's what we want to see. And like I said, I really encourage, and he goes around all over the country, and I give him credit. He's been working, and I don't think that's always been the case. But during pretty much the whole year 2025, the brother's been working and not always maybe doing the things that I agree with, but nonetheless, as our president, I will say that he has been working on behalf of the members. And one of the things he's been doing is getting around the country. And I'm really surprised that more members are not asking him more pointed questions. At least I haven't seen as many where it's like, hey, can you tell us exactly how we're going to get a different outcome next time than last time? Because it's not really making sense yet. He kind of goes over the whole, what's going on in the world and what's going on in the NALC and, this and that. And it's like, okay, well, you as our leader, how are you leading us into a different, how are we going to get a different outcome than we got last time? And I don't think we've really got that answer. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today. So anyways.
Yeah, no, you let him go, he'll go. He'll just be like the Energizer Bunny. He just keep going and going. But whether he says anything of value, it's yet to be determined. I mean, I don't think so. But that's we'll see as we get further down the line. We'll see if when he gets into conversations with the Postal Service, let's see if he actually gives actual updates. Let's see if we get the member portal up and whether we get that stuff. But I mean, you know what? Can I gauge your producers here? Sarah, Renee, what do you guys think?
I love that.
What do you guys think? Do you think we're gonna see a brand spanking new Brian Renfro taking care of the collective bargaining agreement?
I don't think so.
No, why?
I don't know. I don't. I guess
You don't?
creatures are people are creatures of habit, and I mean, he would have to conscientiously want to make that effort, and I don't know if I see him being that kind of person or not. I mean, I don't know him, but I don't know.
He's there standing in a meeting room, surrounded by our normal carriers supposedly, and there he's talking to them. He's explaining. Does that not give you a sense of optimism?
I mean, I'm always hopeful, but
no, not enough,
No.
right?
not enough.
Renee?
I don't like how Mike got the smile on his face as
I don't like how you can see me, but I can't see you. How about that?
No, you can't. Well, no. But no, I don't have faith that we're gonna have anything different than what we had before. I mean, it was voted down, and what did we get? So why would I think anything differently? So
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm same. I agree. I don't think the Lepers lost his spots. I think he's still the same guy, and I think we're gonna get the same old story because now he could do it with impunity because those charges I sent out, they got ignored. So we established that the Constitution, whether we believe in it or not, has been violated and can be violated without any repercussions. And no matter, there are fighters on there in the executive council, like Mike here, we're ultimately dealing with an authoritative figure like Brian Renfro. I always said and this is my opinion, I'm talking my own myself here, but it's a microcosm. The Postal Service, the National Association of Letter Carriers, is a microcosm of what we're really dealing with nationally. And I feel like you could see the parallels. And I very much think that Brian Renfro is acting with impunity. I have another question for you guys.
Hold on, I want to ask one question, just real quick.
Yeah.
A scale of 1 to 10, what do you guys think was our success rate in the last contract? In other words, 10, we did really good. 0, we accomplished nothing. Like, how would you rate the last round of contract negotiations? The result that we got, was it a 10 or a 0 or somewhere in between? How would you rate that?
Who's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I would say like a 3. Like, it's not the absolute worst that it could have been.
3 is fine. What do you guys think it was?
Okay. Let's see. 1 to 10.
Yeah, 0 to 10.
0 to 10. I'm gonna give it I'm gonna give it a 4. Those we talked up wage increases huge, and I think that was really what hurt the membership. I understand we have a history of maybe general wage increases not being so spectacular, but given inflation, given the fact that UPS got a substantial increase, I don't care what their business looks like right now. At the end of the day, inflation's inflation, and we needed to get a decent general wage increase, and we didn't get it. And so that is a huge, you lose a lot of points with that. Also, Article 8, I think
we don't need to go into the details. I just wanted to gauge you guys on this because I got something I'm going to tell you after this. Renee, what do you think it was?
Well, saying how I voted it down, I'm gonna give it a 1.
I figured you'd be the lowest. So you guys gave it a 1, 3, and a 4. I guarantee you, President Renfro is going to give it like an 8 or something. In his mind, we accomplished a lot. He'll say there was more changes in this contract than there have been in the past, and the pay raise, because of course he doesn't account for inflation, but he says, if you add the dollar amount of the pay raises, they were higher than in previous contracts. And so, like I said, in his mind, it's like an 8, and in the majority of the members, it's not nowhere near that.
You're saying 8. I think he thinks it's a 10.
Yeah.
I
don't think the brother is that arrogant, but anyway, it's up there.
Okay, 9.
I mean, I was at National. I do think he thinks he's that arrogant. I'm just going to say that, but yeah.
All right. But anyway, the point is that how do you have any confidence that this time is going to be any different if the person that is leading the charge and making all the decisions and, doing the whole thing thinks that it went well last time, and so they plan on doing the same things again. It went well, right? I think that is our biggest hurdle and our biggest challenge, in my opinion, going into this round of contract negotiations.
All right. Okay, I got my
What's
question.
your question? Go ahead.
Okay, my question. All right.
This for Renee, right?
This is for both Sarah and Renee right here.
No. This is Mike drop Monday. So.
Mike's about to drop off. You guys have at it.
Hey, did you guys actually read the charges? Be honest.
Good question.
I'm pretty sure I did.
Okay.
I can't remember specific details because I want to say that you had posted them or a copy of them, and I had looked at it then, and I was like, oh, okay. And then also I want to say that at some point Mike had shared them as well.
Mhm.
And I think I had read them there also.
Right. Okay. Did you ever share them?
That I'm not sure. I might
Yeah.
have. I might have sent like a direct link in like a group chat before too.
Right. Right. Renee?
Yeah, Renee.
I believe Mike read them, and I was listening.
Yeah.
So I did. If you want to be technical, but yeah, I did share it amongst like
Hey,
other
Renee, you
stewards.
being the queen of reading the transcript on a podcast, did
Yeah.
you happen to go to the Code Blue podcast and look at the transcript?
No, I didn't. I didn't read the transcript yet. But no, yeah, I do read transcripts though.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
we
you do?
know.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, we normally look to skip to like the parts that we want to find
Oh,
out
cool.
about.
No, I mean, hey, Code Light Blue is a better way to get that information, and I don't stutter there, so I guarantee I no stuttering. The magic of editing, so it's just straight to the point. I try my best to be as clean with that one, and I try to summarize it, use some analogies here and there to make it to simplify it. But I do read it verbatim. And so that's always, we try to use whatever method we can. But I wanted to highlight that because I feel like that really is, you're just two people. But
Yeah.
I really feel that you're two people, but you're interested enough to help with this podcast. So there are people out there who are just regular day-to-day carriers. They just do their thing. They don't have time to read the charges, you know?
Mhm.
They don't have to read it, all that, especially on their phones. Like if they're getting it from their Discord or something, or their Facebook, they upload the file and they just go, okay, I'm scrolling this. I'm not going to put this on my computer. So I mean, I knew it was limited, and so I hope audio helps. And if anybody really wants to go ahead and see what we're talking about, if you guys haven't read the charges for yourselves, I strongly urge you guys to listen to Code Light Blue and make the judgment yourself whether these were valid charges, and also go in there with the mindset that these things aren't dead. They very much can be brought up again. And if somebody wants to pick up the flag and go forward, go for it. Go for it. Just like I appreciate Mike for doing his thing. Just remember those folks who helped pave the way. Everybody who helped pave the way to get to where we're going. And
Mhm.
that's how change happens. It's not just one person making the change. It's multiple people, and a lot of people take the L's, and but they take the L's for that next person to potentially get that W. And I guess I'll wrap up with that.
Perfect. I was just about to say, let's wrap it right on that. I think that's great. Appreciate you coming on, brother. Appreciate your insights and everything. And we're just really happy here on the show that we're recording this on Tuesday, and we will definitely be on time for Mic Drop Mondays this week.
Yes.
We're real happy about that. So, hey, thanks a lot to you, man. Appreciate everything that, all your comments and everything that you've done up until this time. And thanks for taking your time as well. We really
Yes,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Everyone have a good night. Dun, dun, dun.